The house never felt the same after that week. I left for college the next morning, hugging my parents too hard in the driveway while the brick masons were already mixing mortar to seal the storm doors forever. Mom kept saying, "It's over, honey, we're safe now," but her eyes were glassy and she kept glancing at the side of the house like she expected something to crawl out of the ground. Dad just gripped my shoulder and told me to focus on school. I nodded, got in my car, and drove the 4 hours back to campus with the music blasting so loud my ears rang, anything to drown out the memory of that growling at 2:47 a.m. The first month of the semester I called home every single night. Sometimes twice. I'd ask casual questions about classes or the weather just so I could hear their voices and make sure they were still okay. Mom always answered on the second ring, and she always said everything was fine. But I could hear the strain in her voice, the way she rushed through the conversation like she was afraid to linger on the phone too long. One night in late September I asked if the brickwork was finished. There was a long pause. She said yes, the doors were completely sealed, 2 layers of cinder block and fresh concrete poured on top. "You'd need a jackhammer to get in now," she laughed, but the laugh cracked in the middle. Then the text started. It was always around 2:30 a.m. my time, which was 1:30 a.m. back home. My phone would buzz on the nightstand and I'd wake up instantly, heart already racing before I even looked at the screen. The first one was from Mom. "Are you awake?" I typed back immediately. "Yeah, everything okay." 10 minutes later. "Sorry, just a bad dream." The next night, same time. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" I wrote. "Nothing. Go back to sleep." By the third night I was sleeping with my phone in my hand. The message came at 2:47 exactly, the same minute the banging had started that night in August. "There's scratching under the floor again." I called her. She picked up on the first ring and whispered, "I didn't mean to scare you. I think it's just a mouse." Dad set traps, but there were no mice. The exterminator came twice and found nothing. Dad even drilled a tiny inspection hole in the bedroom floor and shined a borescope down there. Just brick and concrete where the storm doors used to be. He sent me the video. You could see the fresh mortar still looked wet in places. October rolled in and the messages stopped for a while. I let myself believe it was over. I started sleeping again. Then one Friday night I was at a party when my phone exploded with missed calls, 8 from Mom, 3 from Dad. I stepped outside into the cold and called back. Mom answered crying. She could barely talk. Dad took the phone. "Someone was in the backyard," he said, voice shaking. Floodlights came on and I saw a man just standing at the edge of the trees staring at the house. When I opened the back door he took off running. They called the police again. Same officer as before came out, walked the yard with a flashlight, found one bare footprint in the soft dirt near where the storm doors used to be. Adult male, size 11 or 12. No other tracks leading in or out. Like he dropped out of the sky and vanished the same way. Dad installed trail cameras the next day. 4 of them pointed at every corner of the yard. For 2 weeks they caught nothing but raccoons and the neighbor's cat. Then on Halloween night at 2:47 a.m. again, one camera went offline. When Dad checked the footage the next morning the last frame showed a tall figure in a dark hoodie standing 3 feet from the lens. Face completely covered by the hood, hands hanging limp at the sides. The timestamp froze at 2 hours 46 minutes and 59 seconds and then the feed cut to static. Dad sent me the clip. I watched it 20 times trying to zoom in on the face but there was nothing, just black shadow where a face should be. I called him and told him to send it to the police. He said he already did. The officer told him it was probably a prank, kids messing around on Halloween. Dad asked why a kid would know to stand in that exact spot at that exact minute. The officer had no answer. Thanksgiving break was coming up and I didn't want to go home. My roommate thought I was insane. "It's your family, dude. You have to go." I booked a cheap Airbnb 2 hours away instead and told my parents I had a group project I couldn't miss. Mom cried on the phone. Dad just said, "We understand." I hated myself for it. 2 days later Dad texted a single photo. It was the patch of fresh concrete over the old storm doors. Someone had scratched a symbol into it while it was still wet, a circle with an X through it and weird jagged lines coming off like rays or claws. The concrete guys swore they poured it smooth and came back the next day to find the mark. They offered to grind it off and re-pour for free. Dad told them to leave it. He wanted the police to see it first. I broke. I packed my car that night and drove home through sleet and freezing rain, arriving at 4 a.m. Mom met me at the door in her robe, eyes red from crying. Dad was in the living room with his shotgun across his lap. He didn't even say hello, just nodded like he'd been expecting me. We sat up the rest of the night talking in whispers. They hadn't slept through the night since August. Every few days they'd hear tapping under the floor, always between 2 and 3 a.m. Sometimes dragging sounds like before. Once Mom swore she heard someone whispering her name from inside the vents. Dad had ripped half the ductwork out of the crawl space looking for a recorder or a speaker and found nothing. The next morning we all stood in the backyard staring at the symbol scratched into the concrete. It was exactly like one of the drawings I'd seen on the basement pillars, the one with too many arms reaching out. Dad got a sledgehammer from the garage and started smashing the concrete himself. He broke through after 20 minutes of swinging. Underneath was a void, a narrow tunnel maybe 2 feet wide dug into the earth, angling away from the house. The sides were smooth, packed hard like someone had been working on it for weeks. Dad called the police again. This time 2 detectives came. They crawled into the tunnel with flashlights and came out pale. It went 30 feet under the backyard and stopped at a vertical shaft lined with wooden boards, like an old well or mine. At the bottom was a sleeping bag, more empty food cans, and a spiral notebook filled margin to margin with the same symbol scratched into the concrete, over and over, thousands of times. They brought dogs. The dogs tracked the tunnel back under the house and refused to go any farther, just sat at the edge of the concrete pad and howled. One of the detectives told us quietly that the notebook also had our names written inside, mine, Mom's, Dad's, each spelled out in tiny cramped letters across entire pages. That night we checked into a hotel 30 miles away. The police put crime scene tape around the yard and posted a car out front. We didn't go back for 4 days. When they finally let us return, the tunnel had been filled with concrete and the entire backyard regraded. The detectives told us the case was now classified as ongoing stalking with aggravating factors, and that they were bringing in the state police. They installed motion lights and a new security system paid for by some victims fund I'd never heard of. We tried to go back to normal. Christmas came and went. Mom decorated the tree like always but kept looking over her shoulder. Dad slept with the shotgun next to the bed. I stayed home that whole break, afraid to leave them alone. January was quiet, too quiet. No tapping, no footprints, no camera glitches. We started to hope it was finally over. Then one night in early February I woke up at 2:47 a.m. to my phone buzzing. It was a video call from Mom. I answered and the screen was dark. I could hear her breathing fast, almost hyperventilating. "Mom, what's wrong?" She didn't answer. The camera flipped and I saw the hallway outside their bedroom. The bathroom light was on, casting a thin triangle of yellow across the carpet. Something moved in that light, tall and thin, stepping slowly into the hallway. The call ended. I screamed their names into the phone, dialing over and over. No answer. I was throwing clothes into a bag when Dad finally called back. His voice was hoarse. He was inside the house, he said. "I shot at him. I think I hit him. He went out the back window." Police found blood on the carpet and a smeared handprint on the wall going out the window. A lot of blood. They tracked it across the backyard to the tree line and lost it. No body, no arrest, no explanation how he got past the alarm and the deadbolts and the dog that never barked once. They moved the next week. Sold the houses as for $20,000 under asking and never looked back. They're in a second-floor apartment now with one entrance and a doorman. I transferred to a school on the East Coast just to be farther away from that place. The new owners lasted 6 weeks. They called my parents in April asking if we'd ever had problems with the house. They said their little girl kept waking up screaming about the man under her bed who scratched on the floor and drew pictures for her. They moved out the same day. The house has been empty ever since. Sometimes I drive past when I'm visiting Montana. The for sale sign is still in the yard, faded and crooked. The grass is overgrown and the windows are dark. But every time I slow down I swear I see movement behind the curtains on the first floor. Just a shadow shifting side to side like someone pacing. I still get the random text from Mom at 2:47 a.m. sometimes. It's always the same 3 words. "He followed us." I never write back. I just delete the message and pull the covers over my head like I'm 8 years old again. Because I know one day I'm going to get a call that isn't from Mom or Dad. And whatever is on the other end of that call is going to know exactly where I live now, too. Some doors you can brick over. Some you can fill with concrete and regrade the yard and move 1,000 miles away. But once you let something know, you can hear it scratching under your bedroom floor, it never forgets your name. Imagine coming home from college to an empty house, only to discover someone has been living secretly beneath your bedroom floor for months, scratching demonic symbols into the walls while you slept. Then imagine locking them out, and hearing them try to break back in at 3 a.m. These are 3 true American horror stories that will make you afraid to be alone in your own home, your own car, or your own tent ever again. I had one last week at home before heading back to college for my sophomore year. My parents had just moved into a smaller house after I graduated high school. They kept calling it their empty nest house, a cute little one-story place with light blue siding and a big front porch. They swore up and down it had no basement, just a crawl space for pipes and wires. They even joked about it during the tour, saying the house was too old and cheap for anything fancy like a real basement. I believed them. Why wouldn't I? They left for a 7-day cruise the day before I got home, so the house was all mine. The first night everything felt normal. I ordered pizza, watched Netflix in the living room, and went to bed around midnight. That's when the tapping started. It came from directly under my bedroom floor. Tap, 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 like someone using a fingernail on wood. Steady, slow, patient. I froze under the covers and listened. I told myself it was the new house settling, or water in the pipes, or maybe a mouse. But the rhythm never changed and it never sped up or slowed down. It just kept going for almost 20 minutes and then stopped as suddenly as it began. I finally fell asleep with my heart still racing. The next night it came back louder. Same time, same spot, same rhythm, but now it sounded like the person was using something harder, maybe a knuckle or a small rock. I got out of bed and pressed my ear to the carpet. The sound was definitely coming from under the floorboards. I walked around the room trying to find the exact spot, but it felt like the tapping followed me. No matter where I stood, it was right beneath my feet. I grabbed my phone and recorded 30 seconds of it just to prove to myself I wasn't going crazy. When I played it back, the tapping was crystal clear. I slept with the lights on that night. Night 3 was when everything changed. The tapping turned into dragging and scraping. It sounded like long fingernails being raked across bare wood, mixed with something heavy being pulled inch by inch. Sometimes the dragging would stop and the tapping would start again, almost like whatever was down there was counting or keeping track of something. I sat up in bed clutching my blanket and stared at the floor. I kept waiting for a hand to punch up through the boards, but it never did. The sounds went on for over an hour. I didn't sleep at all. Morning came and I called my parents on the cruise ship even though the international minutes were expensive. My dad told me to crawl under the porch and check the crawl space for raccoons or squirrels. I didn't want to, but I did it anyway. I pulled the little access panel off, shined my flashlight in, and saw nothing but pink insulation and spiderwebs. No animals, no droppings, no sign anyone or anything had ever been under there. Dad said I was just jumpy because I was alone in a new house and told me to relax. I tried, I really did. That afternoon I walked the outside of the house looking for any other way something could get underneath. There was a big pile of old lumber and concrete blocks stacked against the side of the house that had been there since they moved in. I started moving pieces around to see if maybe an animal was sneaking in behind them. That's when I found the storm doors. They were flat against the ground, painted the same color as the house, half covered in dirt and leaves. Someone had gone through a lot of trouble to hide them. My stomach dropped. I grabbed a crowbar from the garage and pried the doors open. Concrete steps went down into darkness. The smell hit me first, old food, body odor, and something metallic. I turned on my phone flashlight and went down. The basement was long and narrow with wooden support beams every few feet. Empty ramen cups, Vienna sausage cans, and water bottles were scattered everywhere. Someone had definitely been living down here. Then I saw the walls. Deep scratch marks covered every wooden post. Some were just tallies, 5 vertical lines with a diagonal slash through them like a prisoner counting days. Others were drawings, twisted stick figure people with too many arms, animals with human faces screaming, symbols I didn't recognize but that made my skin crawl the second I saw them. One pillar had a crude drawing of the house from the outside with an X over my bedroom window. My knees almost gave out. I ran upstairs, slammed the storm doors, and called my parents again. They were shocked. They swore the home inspector never mentioned a basement and the real estate listing said, crawl space only. Dad told me to get out of the house and they would fly home early. I didn't leave. I drove to the hardware store instead and bought the biggest padlock they had. I locked those storm doors from the outside and looped the chain through the handles 3 times. That night the banging started at 2:47 a.m. It sounded like someone was throwing their whole body against the doors from the inside. Metal rattled, wood splintered, and a low growling came through the walls. Then came the screaming, high-pitched, furious, not even words, just pure rage that the way back in was blocked. I stood in the hallway with a baseball bat afraid to even breathe. The banging stopped as fast as it started. I ran to the window and saw a tall figure in dark clothes sprint across the backyard and disappear into the trees. I called the police. They searched the basement, took pictures of the drawings, and told my parents to break the doors shut. They did the next day. I left for college the morning after. I still text my mom every single night to make sure they're okay. They say nothing else has happened, but I don't believe the house is empty. Sometimes when we FaceTime I hear faint tapping in the background and my mom quickly says it's just the ice maker. I don't sleep in first-floor bedrooms anymore. Story 2: The car that vanished with its driver. I live in a small Montana town right near the Idaho line where the biggest news is usually a cattle truck tipping over. Back before everyone had cell phones I drove the same 20-mile stretch of 2-lane highway to work every morning. One August morning I passed an old light blue Ford Tempo pulled off on the shoulder. No lights flashing, no one standing outside, just sitting there angled a little toward the ditch like the driver had tried to get farther off the road and given up. I slowed down but didn't see anyone inside. Figured they walked to a farmhouse for help and kept going. That afternoon the car was still there, only now the driver's door hung wide open. Still no person, no luggage on the road, no signs of a struggle. It creeped me out enough that I pulled over a mile later when I finally got cell service and called the sheriff's non-emergency line. The lady thanked me and said a deputy would check it out. Next morning the car was gone. I thought that was the end of it until a week later when the local news mentioned an abandoned vehicle and a missing out-of-state man. The description matched the car perfectly. They said no signs of foul play, just a guy who never showed up to wherever he was going. I got goosebumps realizing I might have been the only person who ever saw that car sitting there. I couldn't let it go. I called my brother Benjamin, who's a firefighter 30 miles away, and asked if he heard anything. He said the sheriff put out a memo asking volunteers to help search the area. I volunteered even though I'm not law enforcement or fire. Something about that open door stuck with me. We searched on a Saturday morning, 6 deputies, 4 off-duty firefighters, and me. We walked the woods and irrigation ditches near where the car had been. About an hour in, someone spotted an old maintenance shack half swallowed by brush. You would never see it from the highway. The padlock was snapped off and the door hung open a few inches. Inside smelled like damp earth and spoiled food. Empty water bottles and candy wrappers were arranged in neat little piles, weirdly organized for an abandoned building. Then one of the firefighters pointed out a perfect bullet hole in the back wall about knee-high. Wood was splintered outward like the shot came from inside the shack. We looked everywhere for a casing, blood, anything. Nothing. Just that one lonely hole. The deputies thanked us and told the civilians, meaning me, to leave. Benjamin told me later even the firefighters were sent home an hour after I left. The whole area got quiet after that. No more news stories, no updates, nothing. A month later I drove back on my own to see the shack again. I walked the exact same grid we had searched and found nothing. No shack, no disturbed earth where a shack used to be, no sign anything had ever been there. Either my memory was completely wrong or someone removed an entire building in less than 30 days and covered every trace. Every late August when the air starts to cool I think about that car, that open door, and that bullet hole in a shack that apparently never existed. I still drive that same highway to work. I slow down at the exact spot every single time. Story 3: The man who watched me sleep in the woods. I've kept my dad's end of summer camping tradition alive even though I'm almost 30 now. Usually I go solo because my girlfriend hates bugs and no cell service. Last August the 1st found a perfect off-grid clearing on Google Maps, 2 hours of hiking from the nearest dirt road. I wanted real quiet. First day and night were perfect. I caught a brook trout the second afternoon and was hiking back to camp proud of myself. I misjudged how fast the sun drops behind those mountains and ended up walking the last 40 minutes in total darkness with just my headlamp. That's when I saw the light. It was a single white glow bobbing maybe 200 yards ahead of me, moving side to side like someone walking with a lantern. I figured another hiker got turned around too. I called out, "Hey, you camping out here too?" in my friendliest voice. The light froze. 10 full seconds of nothing. Then it clicked off. Before I could process that, I heard crashing, branches snapping, someone running full speed through the brush perpendicular to the trail. Not toward me, not away, just sideways into deeper woods. My skin went ice cold. I speed walked the rest of the way to camp, telling myself it was just some paranoid guy who got scared when I yelled. I ate a cold dinner in my tent and tried to laugh it off. I woke up at 3:12 a.m. with that feeling you get when something is wrong. The forest was dead silent, no crickets, no wind. I had to pee bad, so I unzipped the tent door and poked my head out. Moonlight lit the clearing just enough to see. He was standing 15 feet away, perfectly still, facing my tent, hoodie up, hands in pockets, just staring. I couldn't see a face, just a silhouette, but I knew he was watching me. My brain screamed to zip the tent and hide, but my body wouldn't move. I finally forced words out. "Who's there?" The second I spoke, he sprinted straight at me, making the most inhuman high-pitched screech I've ever heard. He crashed into the tent before I could close the door. We rolled on the ground, him clawing at my face like a wild animal, me trying to push him off. I got my switchblade open and slashed his hand. He screamed even louder, jumped off, and ran crashing into the trees, still shrieking. I sat there bleeding from my cheeks and forehead, shaking so hard I could barely hold the knife. I didn't sleep. At first light I packed in under 8 minutes and hiked out faster than I thought possible. I never reported it. What would I say? I was illegally camping and a crazy guy attacked me. I just drove home, threw away the scratched up tent, and haven't been back in the woods alone since. Sometimes at night I still hear that shriek in my dreams and wake up checking the corners of my bedroom. I don't know who or what he was, but he knew exactly where my tent was in pitch black darkness, and he waited until I was asleep to stand there and watch. Some things out in the wild aren't animals. Some things used to be people.